Hi, Mr. P here. Welcome to the Mr. Pollard YouTube channel. Please subscribe, like, ask questions in the comments. Really hope this video is going to help you ace your English. Let's today analyze the character of Arthur Birling through 12 key quotes. Important to say right from the start here that I think a lot of these quotes can also be used to illustrate themes in the play as well. So what about Arthur Birling then? Arthur Birling was created by Priestley to represent the kind of ruthless capitalist businessman who did not care about their employees. They cared about the bottom line, profit margins, and wage costs. The inspector, on the other hand, is created as Arthur Birling's opposite. He's one of the socialists who Arthur Birling mocks in the play. So what do we know? What knowledge, what understanding do we have about Arthur Birling? Well, he's head of the family. He's a patriarch. He's self-made local businessman, a member of the local Brumley community. He's in the running to get a knighthood, as it stands. He thinks his view on the world is wholly correct. He likes giving long speeches, predicting the future, possessive. He's also supposed to be a flawed character. So, quote 1. Arthur Birling is a heavy-looking, rather portentous man in his middle 50s with fairly easy manners, but rather provincial in his speech. So this is the opening stage directions. Priestley's characterizing Birling as comfortably well off. He's overweight, he has plenty of food to eat, he's heavy looking. Portentous means self-consciously important and serious, also excessive. And as an audience, we soon see that with his long, incorrect speeches about predictions about the war, Titanic, the future. He's a character who takes himself very seriously. You know these kinds of people. They're kind of easy to make fun of and mock. And that's kind of the point. Priestley's wanting us as an audience to see him as a flawed character that the inspector can then pick apart. Fairly easy manners shows how he is at ease as head of the family, the patriarch, but this ease will soon stop once the inspector arrives and begins questioning the family. My tip on this is to have a look at the adverbs in the stage directions and how they change during the course of the play. Provincial in his speech suggests that he's from a humble background, perhaps from Brumley itself. He's got what we might say a regional accent. So he's not gone to public or fee-paying school like his son Eric. Perhaps he has known what it is to grow up poor. He almost says as much. They kept us poor in those days. But if he was poor, he no longer has any real empathy for those in that situation. He's kind of forgotten about his background. Elsewhere in the play, his wife Sybil is said to be his social superior, which again suggests that he comes from a fairly humble background. Quote 2. And now you brought us together, and perhaps we may look forward to the time when Crofts and Birlings are no longer competing, but are working together for lower costs and higher prices. Now, the reason the Birling family are gathered together at the start of the play is to celebrate Sheila, who is Arthur Birling's daughter, her engagement to Gerald Croft. So in this quote, Birling shows that he is at least as interested, or possibly more so, in how the marriage will benefit his business. So again, he's showing his kind of capitalist views here. Because Gerald Croft is the son of a rival family company in Brumley called Cross Limited, Birling sees his daughter's marriage as an opportunity to increase the cost by paying staff less and bringing in higher prices. So Priestley wants us as an audience to be a little kind of shocked by this. You know, even at his daughter's engagement party, Birling cannot hide his real excitement. And it's perhaps not so much to do with Sheila, his daughter's happiness, but it's how the marriage will help him in his business. So that helps to reinforce and underline his selfishness. How do you respond to it? Quote 3 is one of his predictions. The Titanic, she sails next week. Unsinkable. Absolutely unsinkable. So again, this is one of his crystal ball moments. We see this with the World War I comments and about the general strike, which he gets wrong. Now, the play was first performed in 1946, just after the end of World War II, but it's set in 1912, 2 years before World War I. Now, the reason that Priestley does this is so that we know, as an audience, that Arthur Birling's predictions are wrong, and therefore, by association, that his capitalist views are also wrong. So when the audience knows more than the characters on stage, this is a technique known as dramatic irony. And in this quote here, we know that the Titanic sank on its maiden voyage with a loss of over 1,500 lives. The phrase unsinkable, absolutely unsinkable, obviously is key. Birling is so convinced of his view being correct because he's not used to being challenged by his family or by others in society. But this is about to change with the arrival of the inspector, of course. You might also look at the stage directions and how he responds to the questions of the inspector. It's obvious that he's not used to it. Quote number 4. But the way some of these cranks talk and write now, you'd think everybody has to look after everybody else, as if we were all mixed up like bees in a hive, community, and all that nonsense. Now, this is such an important quote to learn, I think. Here, Birling's mocking those things that the inspector comes to represent, i.e. socialism, the importance of community. These cranks, well, a crank here is, I guess the definition is an annoyingly eccentric person. But he's referring specifically to socialist writers such as H.G. Wells, George Bernard Shaw. And he's dismissing their views as kind of silly and irrelevant. Perhaps because they challenge his own rather entrenched capitalist views of the world. In the phrase, you think everybody has to look after everybody else, he's stating that he thinks the very concept of caring for each other in a community is a ridiculous idea. And he's dismissive of it. And this is reinforced by the simile, as if we were all mixed up like bees in a hive, community, and all that nonsense. This image is vital. A beehive is a community of bees working together for each other, each with roles, communicating to each other how best to help the community and thrive. It's a powerful symbol of community and hard work. If you ever go to Manchester in the UK, it's a symbol you'll see throughout the city. Finally, Birling dismisses community as nonsense. He does not see it as a powerful, influential local businessman. He doesn't see how he should be giving back to the community that he lives and works in. This is despite his work as an alderman, a member of the council, and as a magistrate, a small court judge for minor offences. Does he do those roles then because he cares? Well, this quote here, quote 4, would suggest not. That he does them actually to look good in the public eye rather than caring genuinely about the community. He's more interested in his public persona. Quote 5 then. A man has to mind his own business and look after himself and his own. And stage direction, we hear the sharp ring of a front doorbell. Birling stops to listen. So Arthur Birling here is showing his selfishness and lack of sense of empathy for others. The pronouns himself and his own really reinforce this sense. When he states, mind his own business, we could interpret this in 2 ways. One would be to keep out of others' problems and situations, but it could also mean, number 2, that a man should look after his business interests, thus reinforcing that Birling is a kind of a true capitalist. I included the stage direction. We hear the sharp ring of a front doorbell. Birling stops to listen because this is Inspector Gould arriving, and it's significant. It's almost as if the inspector can overhear Birling spouting his selfish capitalist views, and he kind of wants him to cut him off mid-sentence and begin the interrogation about Eva Smith's death. Of course, it's unlikely he can hear, which helps reinforce the idea perhaps that he's supernatural. Notice that his surname Goole is a homonym, sounds like Ghoul, Ghoul, which of course is another name for a ghost. Quote number 6. I can't accept any responsibility. If we were all responsible for everything that happened to everybody we'd had anything to do with, it would be very awkward. Well, here Birling's responding to Gould's questions about the suicide of Eva Smith. Even though she worked at his company, he does not accept any responsibility, despite being the one who sacked her for asking for more pay. Well, this underlines Birling's selfishness and also his lack of empathy. Also, if we were all responsible for everything that happened to everybody we'd had anything to do with, it would be very awkward. It's similar to quote 4 with reference to the bees in a beehive. Birling does not believe he has any responsibility to look after anybody else, be that in the Brumley community or, perhaps even more shockingly, his own workforce. So the theme of responsibility, and in particular social responsibility, is kind of a really important one in the play. After all, this is the Inspector Priestley's purpose, to get the Birling family, with all their wealth, power and influence, and I guess us as an audience, to realise the importance of caring for those who are vulnerable in society. Quote 7. If you don't come down hard on these people, they'd soon be asking for the earth. Well, Birling again is showing his capitalist viewpoint. He's referring to keeping labour costs down and is justifying why he did not raise the workers' wages. The phrase come down hard indicates the way he runs his business. He's a very authoritarian, ruthless boss. Additionally, personally, I find the way he refers to his workforce as these people is kind of rude and arrogant. He groups them together and seems to almost kind of look down on them as being beneath him. The point that the inspector will make repeatedly in the play is that each of his workers is a human being with their own hopes, dreams, and families to feed. Asking for the earth is Birling using hyperbole. And he's doing this to suggest that a modest pay rise is like asking for the whole world. He's, of course, employing hyperbole to justify his refusal of the pay rise and for the dismissal of several of the what he calls ringleaders. Quote number 8. Birling angrily. Inspector, I've told you before, I don't like your tone nor the way you're handling this inquiry, and I don't propose to give you much more rope. The inspector says, you needn't give me any rope. Sheila, rather wildly, with laugh, no, he's giving us enough rope so that we'll hang ourselves. Okay, quote 8. So this is an important quote for a number of different reasons. Notice the adverb angrily. I said earlier that tracking the adverbs in the stage directions is a good way of seeing how the power balance shifts during the course of the play. And here we see Birling is now annoyed by the inspector. Birling is showing his arrogance, believing that he's superior to the inspector and tries to intimidate him. I don't like your tone. The saying, give me enough rope to hang myself, means giving enough information to incriminate myself and therefore be found guilty and hanged. So what we see here is that Birling thinks he has the power, and by not saying any more, the Birling family will be safe. But he is wrong. Sheila understands that the inspector is the one with the power now when she laughs. No, he's giving us enough rope. He is the inspector and he has the power now. Quote 9. Birling says, I'm a public man. Inspector massively. Public men, Mr. Birling, have responsibilities as well as privileges. Well, here we see Birling's blinkered view and lack of self-knowledge, and I guess his arrogance as well. He truly believes that because he's been a magistrate, an alderman, he's a local business leader, that he is a public man, by which he means he's kind of a well-known member of the community. But we know that he's previously stated community and all that nonsense. He's dismissed it, thus contradicting himself. So the inspector, as he often does, turns Birling's words against him and tells him he should show responsibility to his local community and the most vulnerable within it by helping the less fortunate. This is the basis of socialism, and it's in opposition to Birling's capitalism. Quote 10. I've got to cover this up as soon as I can. There'll be a public scandal. Actually, this is 2 quotes, but they're short and easy to learn, and they're kind of similar. So Birling here is worried about the family name and also the impact that the scandal's going to have on his business. He's concerned about the public face and wants to keep this kind of facade, despite the fact we know that each member of the Birling family has behaved in immoral ways. So whereas Sheila, Eric and Gerald, to an extent, are willing to own up publicly for what they've done, the older generation, Arthur Birling and Sybil Birling, just think that they can pay people off and sweep the matter under the carpet. It is the younger generation where there is hope for the future and a less selfish future for Britain and for the world. Quote number 11. Nonsense. You'll have a good laugh over it yet. Look, you better ask Gerald for that ring you gave back to him, hadn't you? Then you'll feel better. As seen in quote 2, Birling sees the wedding of Gerald and Sheila as a business opportunity to bring the 2 rival businesses together. Even though Gerald has admitted to an affair, Birling is willing to let his own daughter marry an adulterer. Now, this shows his hypocrisy, surely, and his lack of feeling for his family. Elsewhere, Eric said that Birling's not the sort of father a chap can go to. So we see that he's not very close to his children, and he obviously doesn't really know them very well. It's also patronising to Sheila here with the phrase, then you'll feel better. It's as though he thinks Sheila is incapable of kind of thinking or feeling for herself, despite the way she has clearly grown up during the short time the inspector has been with the family. She's changed. And finally, quote 12. The famous younger generation who know it all, and they can't even take a joke. Well, Birling's mocking Sheila and Eric here, and it kind of shows his cruelty and absence of understanding. Priestley wants to demonstrate that the younger generation were more accepting of change and that the socialist ideologies, and Sheila and Eric feel guilt and remorse for the part that they've had to play in Eva Smith, Daisy Renton's death. On the other hand, of course, Arthur Birling and Sybil, as the older generation, stick with their selfish capitalist ways. They're too old to change. And I suppose in this way, Priestley is, again, showing or offering hope for a more compassionate, empathetic, caring world. So, that's the 12 key quotes for Arthur Birling. Before you go, please subscribe for new content to help you ace your English. And if you've got any questions or comments, then please put them below. And I hope to see you next time, really soon, on the Mr. Pollard YouTube channel. Goodbye.